and the omnibus. So I was forced into the Archers when I was a child. And look, it's come back to bite me later on. I'm awash with this stuff.
The Archers is the world's longest-running radio show, with more than 15,000 episodes broadcast. Despite being a rural flavour show, The Archers is recorded in the heart of...
Welcome to the debate. Today we're placing a microscope over a single, very high-stakes day in a rural workplace. And we're trying to answer a question that really it affects every corner of our economy. We're dissecting the first day of employment for a man named George Grundy. On the surface, the story is, well, it's pretty straightforward. An ex-prisoner gets a job on a dairy farm. He arrives early, performs well, and then goes home to a celebratory dinner. But we aren't here to discuss the mechanics of farming. We are here to discuss the mechanics of trust.
And the architecture of redemption, really. The central question is this. When an individual with a significant criminal record enters a vulnerable ecosystem, a small business, is there competence? Is it evidence of a genuine transformation? Or is it a calculated performance that's designed to manipulate?
Right. It's that friction between rehabilitation through labor and, on the other side, existential risk management. We are looking at George's first day at Meadow Farm. You see a man turning his life around.
And I see a textbook case of what security experts might call probing the perimeter. The whole controversy really centers on one specific action: George's decision to perform unrequested maintenance fixing a broken gutter on his very first day. Was this an act of service, or was it an act of transgression disguised as altruism?
I represent the position that George Grundy's actions, his punctuality, his refusal to be, coddled, and his technical initiative are all objective evidence of a man who is effectively reintegrating into society. To see his competence as a threat is to indulge in a kind of cynicism that actively punishes the exact behavior we claim to want from ex-offenders.
And I'm going to take the opposing stance. I'd argue that skepticism here is not prejudice. It is a necessary survival mechanism for the business. George's behavior, specifically the way he steps outside his assigned role to create value, it just bears all the hallmarks of a manipulation tactic known as inventing work. It's about creating a psychological debt. I believe the suspicion shown by Esme's relative, Josh, is maybe the only barrier standing between the farm and potential exploitation.
Okay, then let's dismantle this exploitation theory. And I think we have to start with the logistics of the morning. The timeline really matters here. We aren't just looking at a man clocking in. We're witnessing a battle for agency. George's father, Will, wakes him at 3:30 a.m. Will offers to drive him. It's raining, it's cold, the roads are slick. The rational, easy choice is to take the car.
Guarantees he gets there on time.
Exactly. But George insists on his bike. He explicitly says, "It doesn't look very good if I've got my dad out of bed to drive me to work." It's more than just a sentiment. It's a structural rejection of the dependent child role. He is asserting himself as an independent economic agent. If he accepts the ride, he arrives as Will's son. By biking, he arrives as Esme's employee. And that distinction is crucial for his self-esteem. He arrives soaking wet, probably physically exhausted before the shift even starts, just to prove a point about his own reliability. That isn't the behavior of someone looking for a shortcut.
I don't disagree that it looks good. My concern is that George knows it looks good. That refusal of the ride is also a refusal of oversight. By biking, he controls his own timeline. But okay, let's move to the arrival. He gets there. He performs the morning milking. And I will concede, technically, he is proficient. Esme herself notes that he knows exactly what he's doing. But in a high-risk environment, technical proficiency is just the baseline, right? It's not a character witness. The problem arises immediately after the assigned task is complete.
You're moving to the gutter incident.
I am. This is the pivot point of the entire debate. George finishes milking. He then identifies a blocked gutter with a damaged bracket. He doesn't just report it. He finds the tools in the shed, he climbs a ladder, and he fixes it. To you, this is initiative. To a security mindset, this is a breach of protocol. It's day one. He has zero accrued trust capital. Yet he feels entitled to enter the tool shed, select equipment, and alter the farm's infrastructure. In social engineering, this is what they call the foot in the door technique. You make yourself indispensable in areas where you weren't asked to be, which makes it much harder to remove you later.
I think you're pathologizing a standard, positive work ethic. Let's look at the operational reality. Esme admits the gutter was blocked. She admits the bracket was damaged. It was actively leaking water down the wall. This isn't some invented problem. It represents deferred maintenance that was threatening the building. When George points it out, Esme confesses, "I hadn't gotten around to it." And George asks permission. This part is key. He says, "I could have a look at it if you like." Esme gives explicit consent. She says, "That'd be great, tools in the shed." He didn't break into the shed, he was directed there. This is a transaction of value. He saw a problem, offered a solution, and the employer accepted. To frame that as a breach is to suggest an ex-convict isn't allowed to be helpful.
It's not about whether he can be helpful, it's about the strategic utility of that help. You have to analyze the reaction of the third party. Josh arrives, sees the work done, and his first reaction is, "I was going to do that." That is a crucial data point. On a family farm, labor is distributed based on a sort of, unspoken hierarchy. By fixing the gutter, George is effectively doing Josh's job. He's displacing a family member. And Josh identifies this immediately as inventing stuff to do. The fear is that today it's a free favor, but this creates leverage. It sets up a dynamic where Esme starts thinking, wow, George does things Josh never gets around to. He wedges himself between the family members.
And I think this is more likely. It simply highlights that Josh has been neglecting his duties and feels threatened by a competent worker. Josh's reaction is territorial, not logical. He accuses George of doing it just to get paid extra. But when Esme asks him, "Why do you think I should pay him extra?" Josh has to admit, not yet. The crime Josh is accusing George of hasn't even happened. George didn't ask for a penny for the gutter. He saved the farm money. He saved Esme time. He saved the building from water damage. To twist that into a negative is to demand that George be not just a good employee, but a psychic one who has to tiptoe around Josh's insecurities.
Not yet is the operative phrase. Manipulation is rarely an instant transaction. It's a process. It's grooming. You demonstrate value, you create dependency, and then you extract value. George has successfully completed step one. He has demonstrated value. Esme is now thinking, what would I do without George? And that is exactly where a manipulator wants their target. And we cannot ignore the context of the employer. You're relying on Esme's satisfaction as proof of George's success. I would argue that Esme is a compromised observer.
Compromised? She's the business owner. She is the one looking at the balance sheet. She notes that because of George, she was able to just focus on work instead of juggling a dozen tasks. That is a rational economic assessment.
It's an assessment born of desperation, not objectivity. We have to look at the macro environment of the farm. We learn Esme is under extreme stress. The threat of bird flu is looming. She mentions an infected goose found nearby. She's obsessing over biosecurity measures. She explicitly says, if it took hold, I'd stand to lose everything. She is operating in a state of high cortisol anxiety. And when you are that terrified of an external threat, you become desperate for internal stability. George appears as a savior figure.
Introducing the Archer's mug, where elegance meets everyday comfort. Crafted from premium white ceramic, designed with vibrant peekaboo colors inside, simple, modern, and stylish. Start your day the Archer's way, with warmth, familiarity, and the comfort of voices you've come to love. As the stories unfold on the Archers, let this mug become part of your daily ritual, a small reminder of life in Ambridge. Practical for every home, dishwasher and microwave safe. Available in 2 sizes, 11 ounces and 15 ounces, designed to fit your lifestyle. Enjoy your favorite drink in a mug that connects you to Britain's most beloved countryside story, The Archers. For more information and to order your very own The Archers mug, follow the link below and make it part of your daily routine.
So Esme has a severe confirmation bias. She needs George to be good because she can't handle another crisis. She's not evaluating him objectively. She's grasping at a lifeline.
The fact that he alleviated that stress is a tangible good.
But let's pivot to the other observer, Josh. If Esme is compromised by hope, Josh is just as compromised by cynicism. His behavior toward George, it borders on harassment. He corners George and says, "I'm on to you." He claims to know what you're like. This isn't based on observing George's actual work. Josh wasn't even there for the milking. This is pure projection based entirely on George's past record.
Or is it pattern recognition? Josh is acting as the immune system of the farm. He sees an external agent and he reacts defensively. And let's be honest, his suspicion provokes a very, very telling reaction from George. This is maybe the most damaging piece of evidence for your reformed man narrative. When Josh presses him, George's polite facade just cracks. He snaps. He tells Josh to get a life, mate. He says, "You're off your head." The tone shifts instantly from the deferential employee to the aggressive peer. That aggression is the prison persona surfacing. It suggests that the polite, helpful George is a mask. And the mask is thin.
I completely disagree with that characterization. You're asking George to be superhuman. He's being accused of a malicious plot while he is literally standing there having done a good job for no extra money. He's human. He's allowed to be frustrated when his integrity is attacked without cause. In fact, his response to Josh contains the most rational argument in the whole scenario. George asks, "Do you really think I'd risk that?" He's talking about the chance Esme has given him. He is hyper aware of how precarious his situation is. To suggest he'd jeopardize his only source of income just to pull a fast one for a few quid on a gutter repair is, well, it's illogical.
Recidivism is a reality, isn't just a catchphrase. It's a statistical likelihood that Josh is right to be wary of. And rationality often goes out the window when pressure mounts. You say George's situation is stable, I say it's incredibly volatile, which makes him dangerous. We need to talk about the family pressure. You see the family support as a positive. I see it as a pressure cooker that is just waiting to explode.
But the family dynamic is undeniably positive. I mean, look at the support network. You have Will getting up in the middle of the night. You have Amber making him a bacon and egg sandwich. The celebration at the end of the day. Garlic bread, bolognese, ice cream. This is textbook criminology. Strong social bonds are the #1 predictor of successful desistance from crime. He has people rooting for him that drives him to succeed. That is the engine of rehabilitation.
It's a beautiful picture, sure. If you ignore the subplot with Amber and her mother, we learn that Amber is pregnant, 8 weeks along, and she is actively hiding this from George. Her mother ambushes her, and Amber's terrified he'll find out. Why? Because she knows George is on a knife edge. She says she doesn't want to worry him. This implies his stability is so fragile that the news of a child might shatter it. This puts George in a position of immense, if unknown, financial pressure. A baby is on the way. The stakes are rising. And when stakes rise, the temptation to cut corners or invent work for money increases exponentially. Josh is right to worry about the future.
That is entirely speculative. George doesn't know about the pregnancy yet. We have to judge him on his actions today. And today, his actions were those of a man exercising restraint. Look at the offer Esme made. She asks him if he wants to come back for the afternoon milking, an offer of more hours, more money, and George declines. He says, "Let's take our time, find our feet first." If his goal was to invent work to extract money, as Josh claims, he would have taken that double shift in a heartbeat. Instead, he showed restraint. He prioritized pacing himself over immediate financial gain. That's the behavior of someone playing the long game of stability, not the short game of cash.
Or it's the behavior of someone playing the long game of manipulation, the soft sell. If he pushes too hard on day one, he spooks his target. By declining the afternoon shift, he appears reasonable, which lowers Esme's defenses even further. It reinforces the idea that he isn't greedy. It's a feint. Look how reasonable I am. I don't even want your money. It makes the eventual ask whenever it comes that much harder to refuse. And let's go back to the biosecurity aspect because I think it's a perfect metaphor here. Esme is obsessed with keeping the farm clean from bird flu. She has protocols, she has barriers. Josh views George as a biosecurity risk in human form, a potential contaminant. You can't just introduce a new element into a closed system without monitoring it. Josh is the quarantine officer.
But that metaphor dehumanizes George completely. It reduces him to a pathogen. This is a human being who, by all accounts, is trying to do the right thing. Listen to the conversation with his father, Will. George says, "Just hope I don't blow it." That is vulnerability. That's fear. That is not the inner monologue of a con artist. At the end of the day, when he's eating that garlic bread, he tells Amber it was good, really good. There's a simplicity to his satisfaction that just rings true. He did a day's work, he got paid, he felt useful. The system worked.
The day ended with a lie, though. Amber tells him her day was all good, despite the confrontation with her mother. The foundation of this perfect first day is already porous, and George's satisfaction might be genuine, but that doesn't mean his methods are sustainable. If he keeps bypassing the farm's hierarchy, if he keeps snapping at Josh, the conflict will escalate. The real test comes when the gutter stays fixed, the milking becomes routine, and, the extra money is needed for the baby he doesn't know about yet. That's when the foot in the door converts to the ask.
And I have faith that when that time comes, George will handle it with the same agency he showed today. The fact he held his tongue as much as he did with Josh shows impulse control. The fact that he biked in the rain shows resilience. These are transferable skills. And Esme needs those skills. The farm needs those skills. If Josh drives George away with unfounded accusations, the farm loses a valuable asset. The risk of losing a good worker is just as real as the risk of hiring a bad one.
That's true ethically, but purely economically, the risk of a bad worker in a small business is existential. If George is a manipulator, the damage he can do is far greater than the value of a fixed gutter. Josh is asking the uncomfortable questions that Esme is too stressed to ask. Is this too good to be true? In my experience, when something looks too good to be true, it usually is. We have to look at probability, not just hope. And the probability is that a man with his history, under hidden financial pressure, entering a chaotic environment, that creates a volatile mixture.
And in my experience, when someone is given a genuine chance and treated with dignity, they often rise to the occasion. George Grundy rose to the occasion today. He didn't just milk cows, he repaired a small part of the world he was in. And that should be celebrated, not feared. He saw a leak and he stopped it. Sometimes a fixed gutter is just a fixed gutter.
We'll see. The gutter is fixed for now, but the roof over their heads, metaphorically speaking, is under a lot of pressure. The cracks in the foundation are there. The hidden pregnancy, the hostile relative, the desperate owner. George is walking a tightrope, and today he didn't fall. But the wind is definitely picking up.
So as we wrap up, we're left with that lingering ambiguity. George's first day was, by any objective metric, a success. The work was done, the employer was happy, the employee was proud. It's a victory for the concept of rehabilitation.
But the subjective metrics, the tension with Josh, the hidden family secrets, the potential for manipulation, they cast a long shadow over that success. We're left asking, did George fix that gutter to help the farm or to help himself? Was it a gift or was it a down payment on future leverage?
And perhaps, in a functioning economy, those two things don't have to be mutually exclusive. He helped the farm and he helped himself. That is the definition of employment.
Or the definition of a leverage play. It really just depends on whether you view human behavior through a lens of hope or a lens of probability.
A fascinating case study in trust, risk, and the complexities of starting over. That's all for today's edition of The Debate. Thank you for listening.
So what are you doing now?
Just getting ready for the next episode. Just moving mics around.
So what do you do?
I do the spot effects on the arches. Any
Are you what we call Foley then?
Kind of. Yep.
Okay. And these are all part of the paraphernalia of production.
Yep. That's the ball bar. That's
this one.
Yep. That's.
Haley so wanted to be in their own place when their baby came. It's due in 2 months. Not much chance of that now. No. I mean, it would have been a stretch for them financially, mind, but I just wish there was something practical I could do to help them, Caroline. I think the Archers has had this immense popularity over the years. basically because it has always very accurately reflected the reality of life and living in a rural community at whatever